You are listening to Season 4 of Learning is the New Working, brought to you by Chris Piri and the Learning Futures Group. Season 4 is our investigation into workplace learning practices of the humanitarian, international aid and development industry. In this episode, my co-curator Lutz shares his conversation with Rob Burnet. And I warn you, this might be one of our most thought-provoking episodes so far. Over to you, Lutz.
Welcome back to Learning is the New Working, and welcome to Season 4. This season we are doing something slightly different and very exciting. We'll still be focusing on learning in the workplace, on how to move the CEO discipline forward. But in Season 4, we'll meet exclusively with people who are part of the $200 billion international aid and development industry. This includes government agencies like USAID or DFID in the UK, as well as international NGOs like Save the Children or Habitat for Humanity, and many private foundations such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or the Soros Foundation. In addition, there are countless local and regional NGO organizations who execute their work at the point of need, be it in health, education, disaster relief, water and sanitation, or housing and refugee aid. We are calling this season Learning for Good. Why, you might ask, is any of this of interest to a Chief Learning Officer? Well, we hope you will listen in and find out. We promise you that you will learn a lot from our guests that will be both relevant and applicable to your own practice and how you approach your work. The Learning for Good series is a co-production of Chris Piri, the founder and CEO of the Learning Futures Group, and me, Lutz Ziob, founder and CEO of Ziob Consulting. Chris and I used to work together at Microsoft, where we, amongst other things, managed the global network of training partners for Microsoft and ran an extensive family of industry certifications for Microsoft. Both Chris and I are learning geeks. We are super passionate about talent development and the role of technology in learning and training. This all contributes to the overarching question how capacity development can help companies succeed in the intensifying global competition today and tomorrow. Today, we have Rob Burnet as the guest of honor on our show. Rob is the founder and CEO of Well Told Story, a 2-time Emmy Award-winning media, research and storytelling company in Africa with a rather unique social mission: to break down barriers that prevent young people from taking control of their own future. Since arriving in Nairobi, Kenya over 20 years ago, Rob worked as an art curator, foundation program officer, TV producer and musician before founding Well Told Story in 2009 and then expanding it into Tanzania in 2015. Since then, Rob has grown the organization into the largest youth brand across East Africa called Shujaaz. Shujaaz applies a multimedia approach using comics, radio shows, social media, SMS messaging, events, and other means to connect with the 15 to 24-year-olds in Kenya and Tanzania. By now, they have 5.6 million regular followers in Kenya and an additional 3 million youth that follow them in Tanzania. We will cover a rather interesting range of topics and insights with Rob. The overall theme of our talk can be described as workplace learning in and for the informal market. Informal work opportunities are typically called hustling in Africa, and Well Told Story is catering to this large, highly important market with a number of offerings and programs, including something they call internally the Hustler MBA. This is a blend of online and offline capacity building services delivered by peers who are already hustling to equip other young people with the critical information and skills required to start and grow micro-enterprises or eventually get a more formal job. Well, let's listen into our conversation now. Hi Rob, welcome to Learning is the New Working.
Hi Lutz, nice to be here.
Thank you for joining us. I'm super excited to have the opportunity to talk to you on our new series called Learning for Good, about your work, your passion, and yourself. Thanks for taking the time to share your insights and experience and how you construct the future of learning and workplace development.
Thank you, Lutz. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Perfect. As is the case, we always start with a couple of very short questions to get to know you. So let me start by asking you, where in the world do I reach you right now? Where do you live and why?
Right now, I'm sitting in unusually sunny Scotland, but most of the time, and actually since 1993, I've been based out of Nairobi in Kenya. So most of my life is in Africa, East Africa, but you just happen to catch me on a holiday, and I'm visiting my family up in Scotland.
So that is quite unusual, sunny Kenya and sunny Scotland. So tell us a little bit about your personal background and your career journey and your own approach to learning.
Sure. So I grew up here in Scotland, but I left a long time ago. I went with my backpack traveling after I graduated. I had a very sort of traditional and formal education myself up here in Scotland, but I wound up in Nairobi with not much idea of what I would do with my life. And I had a sort of eclectic career for the last 25 years. I worked initially for actually scarily for a big game hunting operation in Tanzania. I worked for an African contemporary art dealer in Nairobi. I set up a studio for artists in Kenya called Kuona Trust, which it's a big deal to this day. And then I worked for the Ford Foundation, which is a large American philanthropic organization, funding projects in media, arts, and culture for 6 or 7 years, before leaving and setting up Well Told Story, the business that I've been leading for the last decade or so. And that was very much inspired by the challenge and the need and the opportunity to connect young people in East Africa to big ideas. Now, I describe it that way, but it's learning, really. How do you help young people to connect with the ideas that they need to make life better for themselves?
That's excellent. I think we'll come back to your company in a second. By the way, you call it an eclectic career path. I would call it a very interesting and broad one. And you fit right in with a lot of the guests that we have on this podcast. I think if you're in learning and workforce development and so forth, it is almost stereotypical to have come to that place in a different way. Do you have a personal career mission, Rob?
I'm quite excited about the idea of running a business that makes a profit but also makes a difference in the world. I'm quite happy about the work we've done, and I hope to continue that for the next few years. Can we continue to grow an organization which is both successful financially? It's a successful enterprise, but really makes a contribution at scale to the lives of people in Africa. That's the journey I'm on.
Excellent. And you already started talking a little bit about your organization now, an organization that's called Well Told Story that you funded. Quite an interesting name. So what's up with that? Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, I've always been interested in storytelling, and I've been interested in the power of stories. That there's something happens when a story is good. People lean in. People pay more attention. People start listening not only with their ears, but with their hearts somehow, with their stomachs even. So a good story, a well-told story, is a very, very powerful and a very attractive thing. And so the organization that I set up, really at the heart of that was this notion that can't we use storytelling to get people to pay attention to big ideas, big important ideas that need to be tackled for the world to get better, for life to get better? And can we use storytelling to make a bridge between people who might not be interested, might not be keen to pay attention, but who will listen in on a story. So it's kind of it's learning by stealth, or it's teaching by in secret, and it turns out to be very successful. When we get it right, it really, really works.
Excellent. I believe to know storytelling is also a very African tradition of getting things done, of communication. Is that right?
Well, I don't think it's an African tradition alone. I think it's where everything has come from in mankind, really. I think there's there's an argument which says that storytelling is what separates humans from the rest of the animal kingdom. That it's actually our ability to tell stories that separates us from the from the wolves and the chimpanzees, who only experience life in an immediate way, in a sensory way. But the fact that we have stories allows us to remember the past and to imagine the future. And if you think about that, if you think about storytelling as a way of capturing those two forces, that actually is what elevates us. It's how we organize ourselves. It's how we grow. It's how we learn. It's absolutely at the heart, I think, of how human beings as a species have taken over the world, for better or worse. It's because of our power to process things through stories and to use them to organize and make sense of the future.
And it's really interesting, Rob. What comes to my mind immediately to listen to you is, and nowadays with the social media being everywhere, that kind of very human behavior in a new form seems to be rediscovered. We'll probably come back to social media a little bit later in our podcast. Let me continue by asking you what your understanding of social responsibility and social good is. Your whole organization I believe, is focused on advancing social good as well. And this whole podcast series is also looking at aid and development organizations. So do you have a personal definition and own definition of what you regard as social good and social responsibility?
I mean, I don't have a phrase that I can rattle out to summarize that, but I think I can tell you what it means, I think, for the way we organize ourselves. And really for us, it's about empowerment and it's about agency. So the work we focus on is the idea of giving people control, giving people the confidence and the power to take control of their own lives. So at the heart of our work is the assumption that young people can do things for themselves, that actually young people have all the capacity that's needed to advance the world we all live in. But what we need to do is give them the chance to do that young people will make good decisions when they are empowered to do so. So the social good that we focus on is good that we can create actually in a distributed way by activating the young people who we consider our audience, the millions of young people we talk to. By activating them, we then pass the social good, the keys to social good, we pass to them, knowing that then they, in their vast distributed network, can create value, whether it's economic value or social value, with the key being agency and confidence and knowledge and understanding.
Very interesting perspective. And I love your term of giving young people agency so they can take care of their own life. Having spoken to you and your company before, I also know that you use the term player first, and you really put those young people in the center of everything you do and interpret that way. That's a wonderful approach. And since we're talking about the audiences, tell us a little about which audiences in particular in Kenya and Tanzania you're trying to reach and to engage them, and what are the most difficult parts of the audiences that you're trying to reach and engage?
So we're really focused on young people. So for the last decade, we've made it our mission to speak really in a focused way to 15 to 24-year-olds. Now, of course, lots of people younger than that and lots of people older than that also engage with us, but they're not in the heart of our target. So 15 to 24 is where we've been pointing ourselves. And I think, we're interested in millions of people. We're interested in the mass. We're interested in changing millions of people in a small way so that we can actually change society in a big way. And I think that actually, because of the scale of our ambition, something else which is a real challenge for us, which storytelling helps us to overcome, is the idea of push versus pull. That really we cannot command the attention of our audience. We can't call them into a classroom. We can't get them listening to the radio or television at a certain time. We can't expect them to show up in church. We can't actually ever command them to do anything. All we can do, and this is the approach we've taken, is to say, well, if we create a story which is compelling enough, then rather than us having to push our content until it reaches our audience, they will come and get it from us.